It was a cold, foggy evening in the small town of Ravenswood. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the occasional howl of the wind. Detective James Carter sat in his dimly lit office, staring at a pile of unsolved case files. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a mind that never rested. His reputation as the best detective in town was well earned, but even he had his limits. Just as he was about to call it a night, there was a knock on the door. A young woman, dressed in a black coat and holding a trembling hand, stepped inside. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with fear. "Detective Carter, I need your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, sit down," Carter said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "What seems to be the problem?" The woman hesitated for a moment before speaking. "My name is Clara Bennett. My father, Mr. Edward Bennett, has gone missing. He was last seen 3 days ago, and no one has heard from him since." Carter leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" Clara shook her head. "No, but there's something strange. Before he disappeared, he received a letter. He didn't show it to me, but I saw him reading it. He looked terrified. The next morning, he was gone." Carter frowned. "Do you have the letter?" "No, but I found this in his study," Clara said, pulling out a small, crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. Carter took the paper and unfolded it. Written in bold, red letters were the words, "You are the next target." The detective's eyes narrowed. "This is serious. Do you know if your father had any heirs?" Clara hesitated. "My father was a wealthy businessman. He had rivals, but I can't think of anyone who would want to harm him." Carter stood up. "I'll take the case. Let's start by visiting your father's house. Maybe we can find some clues there." The Bennett mansion was a grand, old building on the outskirts of town. As Carter and Clara entered, the detective noticed how eerily quiet the place was. The air was heavy with tension, and the shadows seemed to dance on the walls. Carter began his investigation in Edward Bennett's study. The room was filled with books, papers, and expensive artifacts. He searched the desk carefully, looking for anything out of the ordinary. "Did your father have a safe?" Carter asked. "Yes, it's over there," Clara said, pointing to a painting on the wall. Carter removed the painting to reveal a small, hidden safe. He tried to open it, but it was locked. "Do you know the combination?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "No, my father never shared it with anyone." Carter thought for a moment. "Let's look for clues. Maybe he wrote it down somewhere." After a thorough search, Carter found a small notebook hidden inside a book on the shelf. Inside the notebook was a series of numbers. He tried the combination on the safe, and it clicked open. Inside the safe was a stack of documents and a small, black notebook. Carter opened the notebook and began to read. It was filled with names, dates, and amounts of money. "This looks like a list of payments," Carter said. "But there's no explanation of what they're for." Clara looked over his shoulder. "I don't understand. Why would my father keep something like this?" Before Carter could answer, there was a loud crash from upstairs. Both of them froze. "Stay here," Carter said, pulling out his revolver. He cautiously made his way upstairs, following the sound. When he reached the top, he saw a shadowy figure darting down the hallway. "Stop! Police!" Carter shouted, but the figure didn't stop. Carter chased the figure through the maze of hallways, but the intruder was too fast. By the time Carter reached the end of the hallway, the figure had disappeared. Frustrated, Carter returned to the study. Clara was waiting anxiously. "Did you catch them?" she asked. "No, They got away, Carter said. But I did find this. He held up a small silver key that he had found on the floor near the safe. What does it open? Clara asked. I'm not sure, but we'll find out, Carter said. The next morning, Carter visited the local bank. He showed the key to the manager, who recognized it immediately. This is a key to one of our safety deposit boxes, the manager said. Carter and Clara followed the manager to the vault. The manager inserted the key into the box and opened it. Inside was a single envelope. Carter opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. It was written in the same bold red letters as the previous note. The moving target cannot escape. The game has begun. Clara gasped. What does this mean? Carter's expression was grim. It means your father was involved in something dangerous. Someone is after him, and they're not going to stop until they find him. But who? Clara asked, her voice trembling. Carter didn't answer. He was already deep in thought, trying to piece together the puzzle. Over the next few days, Carter followed every lead. He interviewed Edward Bennett's business partners, checked his financial records, and even visited the local police station to see if they had any information. Finally, he found a breakthrough. One of Bennett's business partners, a man named Richard Grayson, had recently been seen meeting with a known criminal. Carter confronted Grayson at his office. What do you know about Edward Bennett's disappearance? Carter demanded. Grayson looked nervous. I don't know anything. I haven't seen him in weeks. Carter wasn't convinced. We have evidence that you've been working with a criminal. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Grayson broke down. All right. I'll tell you everything. Edward was involved in a money laundering scheme. He was supposed to make a large payment, but he backed out at the last minute. The people he was working with didn't take kindly to that. They threatened him, and he went into hiding. Carter's eyes narrowed. Where is he now? I don't know, Grayson said. But if I were you, I'd check the old warehouse by the docks. That's where they usually conduct their business. Carter rushed to the warehouse, with Clara close behind. When they arrived, they found Edward Bennett tied to a chair, bruised and battered but alive. Father, Clara cried, running to him. Carter quickly untied Bennett and called for backup. Criminals were nowhere to be found, but Carter knew they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. As they left the warehouse, Bennett looked at Carter with gratitude. Thank you, Detective. You saved my life. Carter nodded. You're not out of danger yet. These people are dangerous, and they won't stop until they get what they want. Bennett sighed. I know. I made a mistake, and now I'm paying for it. Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll figure this out. Together. As they drove back to town, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The moving target was still out there, and the game was far from finished.